afternoon, ladies and gents. My name is Esha Manwani, and I am very delighted in standing in front of all of you all today. Of course, TEDx is the great opportunity to sharing ideas, and it is my great pleasure to be one of you all esteemed talkers today, speakers today. If you think that I'm mocking someone or there's a joke coming, there isn't. That is exactly how I used to speak 12 years ago when I was in the 9th grade. So what's my story? Is this about my classmates mocking me for speaking in a language that I had no command over? Actually, no. Because the one who embarrassed me was someone much older than me. Someone who I used to look up to. So this happened when I was 14 years old. You know, when you're full of hope and energy and rasna and you don't have a single care in the world. It happened at an age where I worshipped my teachers. Because look, when you're 14, you don't know anything. And your teachers, they know everything. So how could they possibly be wrong? But one day, my English teacher came to my class and she dragged me out to a class of 5th graders. She then made sure that the whole class was there and she announced in front of everyone, "Look at these small children. Do you know they speak better English than you do?" She then went on to call one of the kids sitting in the class to come forward to the front and read out his impeccably worded essay to all of us. All the while, I'm right next to him, with my head bowed down in humiliation and tears streaming down my eyes. I honestly didn't hear a word of what he had to say. But I do remember how that nightmare ended. It ended with my teacher saying, "Did you hear that? Perhaps he should be giving you tuitions." I remember that because the whole class laughed. They thought it was really funny. Do you remember your school life? Huh? Do you remember being held in high regard by your juniors? You wanted them to look up to you. As did I. But I was made an example of in front of kids 4 years my junior because they spoke better English than I did. Not even better English. It was as simple as they knew how to speak it and I didn't. So I was humiliated. So in that state, I did what any kid in my place would have done. I went to seek validation from the one person whose opinion mattered the most to me, my role model, my older sibling. But as it turns out, she didn't believe in mincing any words either. She told me in a very matter-of-fact way, "Yeah, so Isha, you do speak broken English. Now you know why I don't introduce you to any of my friends." Ouch. That pinched. It did. That was the day I knew that I had to change something. But first, I had to come to terms with the fact that I was bad at something I didn't even know about until yesterday. See, my family is from Rajasthan, okay? So besides a please, thank you and sorry, we don't speak English at home. We get by just fine with Hindi. So how do you know that you're not an expert at something that you don't even do? It's like all of these years, the world was keeping this dirty secret from me. But today they decided that, yeah, we're going to be completely honest. So at the age of almost 15, I did what I should have done years ago. I bought my first book. Now I should tell you that at an age where all my friends were reading Gone with the Wind, I was reading Filmfare. At an age where, you know, they were playing Monopoly and making 7-letter words in Scrabble with the letter W, I was boasting about my win in Ludo. So to become a part of what I thought was an elite club, I bought my first Enid Blyton book. For those of you who don't know who Enid Blyton is, she's an author who writes books for children aged between 7 to 8 years old. But I didn't care about that. When I read those books, I wasn't made to feel stupid. They didn't talk down to me. They spoke to me in a language that I understood, that of simple English. So I immersed myself in those books. Before I knew it, I was getting transformed from daydreaming about being a Yashraj heroine to pretending that I'm one of the famous five. So some time had passed now, and by now I was eating, reading, and sleeping books. So what had started to happen now is that I still didn't understand the technicalities behind punctuations or spellings. But somehow, the voice in my head was forming grammatically correct sentences. I found myself using words that I didn't even know the meaning of, but I knew that I was using them in the right context. I was saying things like, hey, how many Tazos do you have? Yeah, I have accrued 57 of them. What is accrued? How was I saying these words? I was starting to see the results of my hard work. And around the same time, I remember I had joined a study group with a Parsi friend of mine. Now, if you know Parsis, you know that for most of them, English is their first language. So every time before I would go to her house, I would rehearse a couple of things in perfect English, greetings and such. Why? Because her mother was bloody intimidating. She had these fancy words and perfect articulation. So every time I would say something, she'd be like, pardon? See, all I had were my mispronunciations. So she'd be like, sorry baby, what was that? Excuse me, my child, what are you trying to say? Still, better her than my English teacher, huh? See, by now I knew that my best bet at practicing English was this woman. Because there was no way I was being dragged back into that class of 5th graders. But this isn't about her. This is about, that's right folks, English movie channels. So, for what I'm about to say, I want to apologize in advance if you're sitting next to your parents or someone older than you. But those of you my age, you'll remember that years ago, HBO used to show adult movies at night. Why was I watching adult movies at night? Let me explain. Look, give me a chance. I had one television set in my house, okay? And that was the era that Ekta Kapoor serials were the rage. So every night, between 9:30 to 11:30, my whole family used to come together and binge watch on all these serials. At this point, I really want to blame my parents for making me watch regressive television. But I would be lying, I loved watching all of that. Mihir Virani was to me what Jon Snow is to all of you today. Yeah? So what would happen at 11:30 is my parents would retire to bed. Now is when I would be left unmonitored with the TV. And when I would start flicking these English channels. I was in complete awe of how these people were speaking flawless English. You know, almost as if it came naturally to them. They were saying things like, it rains in Spain, mainly in the play. I'm going to make him an offer he cannot refuse. Damn, they made it look so easy. So if they could do it, why couldn't I? That started my routine of watching English movies every night, all night. And before I knew it, my English started transforming from bookish English, where I was using words like accrued and pink of health, to colloquial English. That means that I was finally starting to sound like one of you. Hey, and let me tell you, learning English through these movies was a way funner exercise than watching a 4-hour animal documentary on National Geographic. So I'm not apologetic. So some years had passed now, 5 years to be precise. I was 20 years old now, I was in college. By now I was fairly confident about my conversation skills. I was very fluent in English and I made very few errors, just like any one of us would. So to flaunt this newly acquired skill, I dived into everything related to public speaking. I was publishing online blogs, I even took up journalism as a major subject in college, And I was even practicing for this RJ hunt. I remember that because I would walk around my entire house practicing, hey, this is Esha, your host on this starry Saturday night. Now whether you're stuck in traffic or getting bored by a window, I know the next song will cheer you up. It was fun. Around the same time in my college life, I remember this one day where this group of 5 people put up a skit. It was for their sociology project. So basically, the 5 of them would get on stage and each one of them would pretend to be one of us in the class. So we had to guess who is playing who. It was really fun. For example, one of these guys was playing Rohan, who was the nerd of our class. So we were all sitting together and we tried to guess, oh, who's that, who's that? But I was a little perplexed because this one girl on the stage, she kept mispronouncing her plurals. And I couldn't understand. It just seemed like she had some speech defect. But strangely, every time she would talk, my whole class would start looking at me. Why would they look at me? I had a lisp. For 20 years of my existence, and I did not know about it. Geez, talk about living in a bubble. I didn't believe it at that point. I just ran out of my class and I remember my best friend, she followed me and I remember telling her very defensively, that's not how I talk, okay? But I did. By the way, I'm really starting to see a pattern with this public humiliation thing. Are you? Yeah. Needless to say, the next day, I bagged out of the RJ hunt. I didn't have the confidence to do that anymore, no. I was even in the middle of a lot of voice-over gigs, you know, because I loved modulating my voice. I loved going from the sexy, sultry seductress who could make anything sound naughty, to the annoying and chirpy girl who can sound more irritating than your morning alarm clock. But not anymore. Now I didn't have the nerve or the confidence to pull that off beyond the 4 walls of my bathroom. Because there was no way I was setting the stage for another public humiliation. God forbid I discovered a 3rd speech impediment. No. See, the worst thing you can do to yourself is to refuse to see the flaws that you grew up with. Because they become so embedded in you that you can't tell them apart. It's really tricky to work on a lisp because I don't even hear it. What sounds wrong to you sounds completely normal to me. But I knew I had to work on it. So I remember there was a phase in my life where I would talk really slowly, so as to enunciate each and every word. I feel really bad for my then boyfriend because I legit would start a story at lunch and finish it by dinner time. Poor boy. But the point of all of this was that I wasn't going to let my college peers reduce me to a speech defect. I was more than that. So when I graduated from college, I particularly took up jobs that would rely on communication skills. I worked in marketing, I led a team in sales, public relations, I even took up a job in content. Because it's okay that I wasn't perfect. The important thing was that I got started on a journey that looked like a really long and arduous trek. And today, I'm editing other people's work. So if you had told me 10 years ago that Esha, you'd be correcting other people's English, I would have said, "Bade mazak kya ho?" See, I would just like to end saying that it's one thing to have a thought in your head. Second, to actually be able to pen it down. And third, to say it out loud. Today I stand in front of you doing all three in a language that I don't even think in. All because I owed it to the small girl in me who was scared out of her wits for feeling like a misfit. So I just urge all of you to self-reflect, because the point is not to be the best. It is to be the best version of yourself.